You know me, I'm nothing if not a team player. So the people waiting to talk to us, why are you sniggering, Lewis Goodall?
No, I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. So people
James Collegiate O'Brien,
that's what they call it. It's my middle name.
Yeah.
So the people waiting to talk to me about Kemi Badenoch's speech can instead talk to Sheila, who will be here shortly, and taking up precisely the line of inquiry that we were already embarked upon. So
that's better.
Yeah, it is.
That's nicer for them.
Yeah, because I've got to talk to you. Well, I don't have to. I have
there
chosen
you go, Mr. Collegiate. That's what I mean, James.
Touche. Because this is actually really interesting. This is your new podcast that is, I mean, like all the best stories, almost unbelievable.
It is, yeah. This is a story we've been working on for, I think it's like 18 months, 2 years now. It's called Coining It. It's just came out last week. Much to basically because I just lived to try and displease Alistair Campbell, that displaced the rest of his politics at the top of the Apple charts, and the newsagents actually, but I've got a vested interest in that, but we'll leave that to one side. It is an extraordinary story, James, you're right. I mean, this is basically about a man, and the guy called James Parker, who was, I think it's fair to say, deeply down on his luck. He was living in a bedsit. He was very ill. He had COPD, among other things. Living on benefits. Hadn't really made much of his life, I think it's fair to say. And one day, when he was doing these little games in sort of 2015-16, which were quite commonplace at that time, basically where you would do a few little kind of puzzles online, and in return, the companies could harvest your data, but you would get a fragment, a tiny slither of a Bitcoin. And when he went to cash some of these in this website called CoinSpot, he realised he had discovered entirely by accident a glitch which basically allowed him to create as many Bitcoin as he wanted. And initially he couldn't believe it, and then he did it again, and then he did it again, and then he did it again, and before he knew where he were, within about 18 months, he printed effectively £26 million of his own money. And the thing is that and that's an extraordinary in itself, but what's even more extraordinary about the guy is that he decided, obviously, if you discovered this, you might think, well, I'll just do a little bit here and a little bit there, and, not really telling anybody and live off the proceeds. But he decided to tell...
It is a crime. We should be absolutely clear. I mean, it's stealing.
It was a crime.
Before we all get to Robin Hood about it.
Well, indeed, but that is kind of he decided to basically tell all of his friends about it, and he decided to show them how to use the glitch and so on. And in the end, without spoiling the story too much, you can imagine it all goes wrong. But kind of the thing that really interested me about James was that this takes place in Blackpool, which, as you know, is one of the sort of poorest places in Britain. It's got a lot going for it in a lot of ways, but it's also got, a lot of the kind of worst social problems. It's usually top of the index of all the different indices of social deprivation and so on. And everybody involved in this, you can say, are people who never had any luck in their lives, pretty much about anything at all. And basically, the moral quandary at the heart of the story is... You know about crypto. I mean, it's a shady world, right? Mm-hmm. It's a shady world, and a lot of shady people have made a lot of money in ways which we can't be quite sure or clear how they've done it. The whole point of it is that it's beyond the regulation of states, right? And yet you've got these people who I think on some level, maybe they knew it was a crime, but they just sort of thought in a way the system, just for once, to use that word glitching, was glitching for them.
Yeah, and what I love about it is he's not like some genius.
No.
He wasn't doing the coding, or it's not like watching those films where they just have to put loads of green figures scrolling down the screen so that those of us in the audience who haven't got any idea what's going on know that some very clever computer stuff is happening. He stumbled into it in a way that anybody could have done.
He was a complete chancer, as were virtually all of the people around him who did almost nothing to try and conceal the crime. I mean, again, James, you might think that, you might kind of keep it quiet. This is a man who was calling up taxi firms in Blackpool and giving them £500 or £1,000 tips. All the local taxi drivers started, like, every time he put in a call, would race down to his house.
Like Brands Hatch.
Yeah, they all called it. They called it the wacky races in Blackpool. They would just try and get there as quickly as possible. This is a man. And so you're right, it is a crime. But there's this weird juxtaposition of kind of it all being on one level, obviously a crime and wrong, and at one point they go to Dubai and they're literally in Dubai standing there with briefcases full of gold and full of jewellery and full of luxury watches, and yet at the same time laundering the money, and yet at the same time they basically stay in Blackpool. And James Parker, the most glamorous thing he can basically think to do with the money is go and live in the North Euston Hotel in Fleetwood. And he thinks he's made it. He doesn't go to Monte Carlo. He doesn't go to, anywhere sort of deeply, deeply glamorous. He just thinks, this is it for me now. And it's a really both charming, but also kind of, I think, a very political story. Because it's themes of poverty, of criminality, of morality, and about politics in the sense that, as I say, when you have, for example, going up to and including the President of the United States, Donald Trump, days before he goes into office, literally creating his own new token, the Trump coin, not a form of crypto as such, but a sort of fungible token thing. And, he's asked about it. He makes billions because he's going to be the guy who's about to regulate this industry. His company makes billions off it. He's asked when he becomes president, well, Mr. President, don't you think this is a terrible conflict of interest? And what does he say? He says, well, how much money did I make? And the reporter says, well, about $2 billion. And he just turns around and goes, well, that's a lot less than other people. And that's the president of the United States. And then you've got these lads in Blackpool.
You're absolutely right.
It's, and that's the kind of moral quandary at the heart of the story.
It is. And I don't want to say any more because it has a sort of narrative thrust to it. Sam's already listened to it. I've listened to the entire thing in 2 days. The audio production was top tier. It's absolutely brilliant. A few people getting in touch to say they've already enjoyed it. A few people pointing out.
Well, listen again, Sam. Listen again. Let's get the numbers up. Let's really annoy Gary Lineker.
So vote often. Coining It with Lewis Goodall is available on Global Player now, and there is loads more to the story. So I've just given you the barest of introductions, and it is, as Lewis has very modestly pointed out, doing rather well at the moment in the podcast.
I've learned from the best, James.
Sheila,
how's your book doing, mate?
About $250,000.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, it is.
Have some dignity.